I was sitting by the floor-to-ceiling window of my downtown apartment, the winter sun streaming across my silk blouse, when my phone buzzed insistently on the marble countertop. I hesitated, sipping my coffee, trying to savor the quiet. Mornings like these were mine, carefully curated, peaceful, but that buzzing shattered the calm. It was a message from my father, though I hadn't seen him in months. "We need to talk. It's about the dress." My heart skipped. My child's heirloom dress, the one that had belonged to my grandmother, stitched with love and care, now reduced to ashes by my stepmother's jealousy, was supposed to be a memory, not a headline in my life. I closed my eyes, feeling the tight coil of anger and grief in my chest. I'd built a life where no one could touch me anymore, where the pain of my past didn't dictate my days. Yet here it was creeping back in through a simple text. I glanced at the skyline, the city pulsing beneath me, and felt a wave of ironic pride. I was strong, I was capable, and yet this was a reminder that some wounds never really fade. My fingers hovered over the phone. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to sip my coffee and stay wrapped in the bubble I had worked so hard to create. But another part, the part that refused to let injustice slide, knew I had to answer. I remember that night like it was etched into my skin. I was younger, barely 28, and exhausted from trying to keep the fragile peace in a house that had never truly been mine. My stepmother, Evelyn, had always carried a quiet venom, the kind that slithered beneath polite smiles and forced compliments. That evening, it reached its peak. My daughter had been carefully preparing to wear her great-grandmother's heirloom dress for a small family gathering. The dress wasn't just fabric, it was a legacy, stitched with the stories of women I loved and admired. I had entrusted it to my stepmother for safekeeping while I ran errands. I trusted her. That mistake cost everything. When I returned, the smell of smoke hit me before I saw the damage. My stomach dropped. The dress lay in a charred heap on the living room floor, the intricate lace blackened, the delicate embroidery gone. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook violently, and a lump rose in my throat. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make her understand the depth of her cruelty, but I didn't. The fire hadn't just destroyed the dress, it had seared my trust, my peace, and a piece of my daughter's childhood. I sank to the floor, clutching the remnants, and felt tears burn my eyes. In that moment, my grandmother's words echoed in my mind. "Never let someone else decide your worth, darling. Protect what matters, and rise from the ashes they leave behind." She had always believed in me, in my strength even when I doubted myself. That night I made a decision. I would not let her win. I would not let this betrayal define me. I packed what little I could carry and left the house before dawn. Alone, but resolute, I stepped into the cold morning air, clutching my daughter's hand, feeling both fear and determination swirl through me. The fire had destroyed the dress, but it had ignited something far greater. The beginning of my independence, my resolve to never again let anyone diminish what I held dear. Leaving that house was terrifying, but it was the first step toward the life I was meant to have. For weeks, I lived in a small apartment above a quiet bookstore, my daughter asleep in the corner, her breathing a gentle reminder that we were starting over. Every day felt like a test of endurance and patience. Bills piled up, and the nights were long and cold, but I kept my grandmother's words close. Protect what matters and rise from the ashes. I found work as a junior designer in a small boutique firm. My skills were good, but my confidence had been shattered by years of being belittled and dismissed. The office was intimidating, mostly men who questioned my ability, and a few women whose jealousy I could sense like a prickling wind. Still, I poured every ounce of energy I had into my work, often staying late into the night, refining designs while my daughter slept, sometimes sketching by candlelight when the power went out. Then came Laura. A seasoned designer in her 60s, she became my mentor. She recognized the fire in my eyes, the determination she had once had herself. "You're not just good," she told me one evening over takeout noodles. "You're going to be exceptional. But you need to believe it first." Her words were like medicine, and under her guidance, I began to understand my worth, not just as a designer, but as a woman capable of creating my own destiny. The early victories were small but monumental to me. My first client, a local boutique, was hesitant to trust me, but my designs sold out within days. The thrill of seeing someone invest in my vision ignited a confidence I hadn't felt since childhood. From there, the momentum grew. I took on freelance projects, networked cautiously, and learned the nuances of business, marketing, and negotiation. Every setback, every contract lost, every mistake was a lesson I recorded in my mental ledger, a reminder that resilience was more powerful than perfection. All the while, I kept my success hidden from my family. They expected me to struggle, to stumble, to fail. I let them believe the worst. Social media posts were sparse, mundane. No flashy achievements, no hint of the empire I was quietly building. I wanted the reveal to be mine, controlled and perfect, a statement of the woman I had become, not the girl they had underestimated. By the end of that year, I had transformed my freelance hustle into a boutique design company of my own. My daughter thrived in her new school, surrounded by friends who adored her, completely unaware of the storms we had weathered. And I had found a rhythm, a life where fear no longer dictated my steps, where I could build and protect, where every late night and every sacrifice became a brick in the foundation of our future. I had risen from the ashes, and I was just getting started. It was a crisp Friday afternoon when they arrived, my father, my stepmother Evelyn, and a few distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. They expected a quiet, struggling woman, the same girl they had underestimated, dismissed, and in Evelyn's case, actively tried to sabotage. They knocked on my office door without invitation, the chime echoing in my space, a little too loud for comfort. I smoothed my blouse and took a deep breath, allowing the calm I had cultivated over the years to wash over me. "Hi," I said, standing from behind my mahogany desk. My office was a testament to years of grit and perseverance, walls lined with abstract paintings I'd collected from local artists, a few awards for design excellence glinting subtly on the shelves, and a sleek glass table where contracts and plans for expansion lay neatly stacked. Sunlight glinted off the gold accents, and my daughter's sketches, framed professionally, reminded me that everything I built was for her. They froze. I watched disbelief ripple across their faces. My father's jaw tightened. Evelyn's eyes darted, searching for a weakness she would never find. "I wasn't expecting you," I continued smoothly, my voice steady, warm yet firm. "But since you're here," I gestured to the office around them. "This is my world now." The silence was deafening. Their eyes scanned the room, taking in the expensive art, the polished floors, and the technology that ran the business I had painstakingly built. For a moment, I let them absorb it all. I let the tension stretch. Then I dropped the truth. "I own this company," I said, letting the words hang like glass. "I started it from scratch, in a tiny apartment with no money and a sleeping child beside me. Today, it's worth more than our entire old family home. And every contract, every client, every success came from hard work, none of it from anyone here." Evelyn's face went pale, the first flicker of guilt and fear crossing her carefully maintained mask. My father's lips pressed into a thin line. The room seemed to constrict, the air thick with the weight of revelation. "Do you remember the dress?" I asked quietly, letting the memory land. "The one you burned?" Evelyn's eyes widened. Her lips parted. There was no denying it now. "The police report cleared everything up," I continued, watching her blanch. "Your actions had consequences. And the truth always comes out." She opened her mouth, perhaps to protest, to justify, to diminish me, but I let the silence speak louder than words. The evidence, the law, the proof of her cruelty, hung like an invisible verdict in the room. And there was nothing she could do to erase it. I smiled, a calm, unshakable smile. "I've come a long way since that night," I said, letting my gaze sweep the room. "And today, I decide how we move forward. The past doesn't control me anymore. I do." Shock and shame mingled on their faces. a cocktail I had longed to see, not for revenge, but as recognition. They had underestimated me once. Never again. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of my presence settle in the room. For the first time, I had the upper hand, not because I wanted to punish, but because I had earned the right to set the terms. The same people who had tried to undermine me, dismiss me, and destroy what mattered now had to reckon with the woman I had become. "I'm willing to help," I said slowly, my voice firm but calm, "but only if we do this properly. There are conditions." My father's brow furrowed. Evelyn's hands trembled ever so slightly. I continued, my gaze steady. "First," I said, "accountability. You will acknowledge your actions, the destruction, the lies, the manipulation. Pretending it didn't happen is not acceptable. Healing begins with truth." I saw them shift uncomfortably, but I held my ground. "Second," I added, "self-improvement. You will drop toxic habits, seek help where it's needed, and actively work toward bettering yourselves, not for me, but for the family and for yourselves. No more old patterns. No more excuses." My words weren't just rules. They were an invitation for change. I saw the skepticism on their faces, but also the recognition that they had no choice but to listen. "And third," I said, "you must respect the boundaries I've set. This includes my daughter, my work, and the life I've built. If you can't honor that, then our relationship remains professional at best. Love is not control, it's respect." I paused, letting the silence emphasize my point. "I care about all of you, but I am no longer the girl who trembled at your words or hid her pain. I am a woman who has fought for her family, who has turned ashes into something lasting and beautiful. Your actions have consequences, but they don't define me. My choices define me." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I saw genuine remorse, fragile, unsteady, but real. My father nodded slowly, his pride battling with shame. I could feel the shift in the room, the power dynamics tilting back into balance. I wasn't lashing out. I was offering them a path to redemption, but only if they were willing to walk it. Finally, I smiled, the warmth of certainty radiating through me. "Follow these conditions. Show growth, not just promises. Repair what can be repaired, and learn to respect what cannot. And then, maybe we rebuild. But I make the rules now. And this is non-negotiable." The room was heavy with reflection, acknowledgement, and the weight of truth. I had not only survived the past, they had no power over me. But I had reclaimed my narrative, my home, my daughter's innocence, and my life. And in that reclaiming, I discovered a new strength, the power to shape not just my destiny, but theirs as well, if they were willing to earn it. Weeks passed after the confrontation, and slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, change began to take root. Evelyn attended therapy, acknowledging her jealousy and destructive patterns. My father, humbled by his own complacency, began volunteering his time in community work, reconnecting with his values and rebuilding trust in a way he had long ignored. They weren't perfect, they never would be, but they were making strides, guided by the conditions I had set.
Meanwhile, my daughter thrived.
The nightmare of the burned heirloom had faded, replaced by laughter, creativity, and the security of a home where she knew she was protected. She didn't need the dress to remember her family's love. She needed the strength I had fought to give her, and that strength was finally hers to inherit. I often returned to the small, weathered gift from my grandmother, the delicate charm bracelet she had given me before her passing. I had carried it through every hardship, a reminder of her belief in me. Now, I wore it openly on my wrist, a symbol not of fragility, but of resilience. It reminded me of where I had come from, the fires I had endured, and the woman I had become, unshakable, empowered, and in control of my own destiny. Sitting in my office one evening, watching the sun dip behind the city skyline, I reflected on the journey. The pain of betrayal, the nights of doubt, the sacrifices, they had all been part of the story that led me here. And yet, despite it all, I had grown into a life of abundance, respect, and purpose. The dress was gone, But what it symbolized, love, legacy, and protection, remained, stronger than ever in the life I had built for my daughter and myself. I smiled, feeling a profound sense of closure. The past had tested me, the present had strengthened me, and the future was mine to shape. And as I looked at my daughter sleeping peacefully across the room, I whispered softly to myself, a quiet vow and a declaration all at once. I rise from the ashes, and no one, not even fire, can take what I have rebuilt. Bottom of form,